Childhood emotional neglect is most often experienced as a lack of care, a lack of concern, or a lack of response to our feelings as a child. It's as though our parents didn't even notice that we had feelings, or if they did, they minimized them, or even worse, they shamed us for having those feelings. Therefore, as an adult, we do the same things. We minimize, and even worse, we will shame ourselves for having those feelings. And that tends to lead, you can draw almost a straight line from emotional neglect to your health problems and your relationship issues. Welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to help you overcome and heal from emotional neglect. Now, my hope is you never experienced it, but let's face it, every parent at some point, parents by multitasking, they're trying to get their career and make dinner and handle your brother or sister, and so they can't be present for our feelings at all times. So we will all have suffered a level of emotional neglect. It's unavoidable. But there are, because we have always downplayed emotions, this is a very common experience in almost every childhood. I'm going to give you an example from mine. Because this wasn't something I recognized as emotional neglect, until much later in life. But as many of you know, my mother was an alcoholic. And I had never met my godfather. And I was, somewhere between 14 and 16, I think. And he was coming into town. I was finally going to meet him. It was this big thing we talked about for months. And we had this big dinner planned. And so I was going to get my parents and him all to myself. There were four of us, 4 kids in the family. So alone time and where it's just about you was very rare. So we had this big dinner, go to meet him. Well, my mom could barely walk. She was so drunk. And there she was at the table, falling over, falling into her food, falling out of her chair. She would get up to go to the bathroom and stop at the bar and get a drink. Like, it was horrifically embarrassing for me. And we weren't allowed to talk about it. My dad, he talked to my godfather about it. How it had been, he kind of said, this has been going on for a while, and you just have to wait for them to want to stop. But I could have no discussion with my father about it. There was no mention of it in the car, nothing. We were not allowed to have any discussion about my mom's drinking all the years she did it. It was not addressed and basically shamed if we brought it up. That's emotional neglect. Those are deep, horrific experiences. And to not be able to express it creates a deep wound in us. So think through your childhood, moments like that, topics you weren't allowed to address. That's the primary way that emotional neglect gets lived out for all of us. Okay, so I'm identified 7 things here to help you heal from that. So let's get started with that. The first thing is we have to, 1, discover, and then 2, validate our needs and wants. And learn to pursue joy. Because do you see, in that moment, I couldn't express my needs and wants. I couldn't say, Dad, what are we doing? Like, why isn't Mom at home? Like, there was no discussion of, Dad, I don't want to meet my godfather with my mother drooling all over herself and passing out at the table. And, I know this. If I was just about to start reenacting what she did, but I have embodied that trauma so much, I will inflict trauma on you. So there was no discussion of me being able to do that. So that becomes our job as an adult, because what happens is we learn to never ask for it, because there I am, I can't say anything. The spoken or unspoken rule is your needs and wants don't get met, Kenny. I'm the father here. I'm going to deal with it my way. You have no voice. We carry that into adulthood. So we need to learn to voice our needs and wants. We need to learn what they are. Now, there's a video I've done that teaches you exactly how to do this. It's called Codependence Recovery, How how to ask for your needs and wants. I encourage you to go watch that because it lays out the difference, because there's a difference between a need and a want. And there's a way to go about that. So I highly encourage you to go watch that video to get more in-depth knowledge on how to discover what your needs and wants are and how to start asking for them. Number 2, self-care. Do you see, in that moment, I had to give away my self-care. I couldn't take care of myself. It was all being decided for me. So that's another area of how we have to learn to heal from this. And what that requires, at least in my opinion, is a lot of self-care. People will advocate that you include others in it. In other words, it's kind of like you're getting your needs met by someone else. Well, we're going to get to that, but self-care is about me learning to meet my needs myself. So what I always advise people do is make a list of things that bring you joy that don't require somebody else. Well, someone else to make you feel better. I mean, like getting a massage, getting your nails done, those do require somebody else, but that's not somebody you have an intimate relationship with. You go and you pay them for that service. So that's the distinction between the two. But the key is, and I advise my clients, once a day, do some sort of self-care. Now that could be pulling into some store and getting your favorite drink or a favorite snack, but something that nurtures you and brings you joy. Because again, we learn to suppress, minimize, and deny. I don't need that, because we had no other choice. We were shamed. We weren't allowed to bring those things up and have a discussion about them or have them met. And so that's why once a day, I don't care how small it is, learn to do something that nurtures your soul and, as I say, fills your tank. All right, number 3, don't assume, gather information. The biggest, I don't know if it's the biggest, but one of the major things that happens in this dynamic is we're not allowed to ever speak or voice our thoughts and feelings. And so we observe a behavior and we learn to go inside our head and make assumptions that, well, this is what it means. And so our partner does some sort of action and we immediately assume it's an attack and a negate of us, when in many cases they're going through the same thing in their own life, but we've assumed something, so it's created this distance. We did that because we learned I can't have a discussion with mom or dad about this topic. And so therefore the people closest to us in our life, we don't have a discussion either. We immediately withdraw. We make an assumption many times. Most times those assumptions are incorrect. And so this is number 3, learning to gather information. And so what I've learned to say is, hey, can I just ask for some clarity? What did that mean? Or what were you thinking there? Or can you give me some more information as to why you decided to go there instead of come here first? Whatever the situation is learning to pause and stay out of making up what it is their thought, feeling, belief, or action is. Don't make up what it means. Gather information. Ask for clarity. Okay? Number 4 is make requests for care and for love. Again, we get inside our head and go, what's the point? Like, that's a mantra I had. Like, to survive those things with my dad is I'd want to express my needs and wants. I'd want to gather more information, but my dad would always shut me down. I was minimized or shamed for bringing that stuff up. And so my mantra, I would consider and go, oh, what's the point? And so in part, the reason in my first marriage I got abused was I didn't know how to stand up for myself. I had no clue. I literally could not voice anything I needed and wanted. That's not her fault. That's my responsibility. And so what I encourage clients to do is, it can be very scary to do it with a significant other, because deeper, closer relationships remind us of that original parent-child dynamic, and so it feels risky. We will, whether we recognize it or not, subconsciously we will drop into a childlike age, and it'll be very intimidating to ask our partner. So learn to create a list of people that, in a sense, you're the least closest to, and ask the ones at the bottom of the list, the ones that There's less of an investment. It's less scary. It's more okay if they say no to the request. Start with them and work your way up the list. All right. Number 5 is learn to say no. Again, look at that situation with my father. I couldn't say no to it. I couldn't say, Dad, this is not okay. And so, again, that's why I ended up with a physically and verbally abusive spouse. I didn't know how to say no. Didn't know I could say no. I picked somebody who was like my father. I put them in the authority position over me. It's what we all do. It's why we end up with narcissists or whatever, is you went through this in childhood, so you're just living out that same chaos and confusion and all the dysfunctions, all that poor treatment you get from the narcissist or whoever it is, you got it in childhood, and you're in the exact same position as a child. Well, that's what I did too. And so I didn't know how to say no, like she would punch me. We'd be in the car and she'd just be punching my arm. What? Can't take it? You're a man, right? Do you hear how degrading that is? You would think it'd be easy to say no. Maybe it is for you, but that tells you what my childhood was like. It wasn't easy for me because I wasn't allowed to stand up for myself. So I did the best I could with where I was. It doesn't make me weak, and it doesn't make you weak that you weren't able to stand up for yourself. We are all doing the best we can with where we are at the time. We can only do what we know, and as we know more, we can do more. And as we know better, we can do better. Well, now I know more. Now I know better. So now I don't tolerate it. I've had women in public settings, like kind of cocktail parties, kind of jokingly do something like that. And it's a stranger. And I immediately go, look, I was abused by a woman. I know most likely you were just joking, but I don't allow any woman to ever jokingly or in any form hit me. So I just boom, and they just get terrified, but I'm like, look, this isn't about you. I'm just letting you know this is my dysfunction. I will not tolerate a woman touching me in any way that's aggressive. I say no. I put that boundary up right away. I am very good at that. Now that I know better, I don't care if it makes them uncomfortable. I will not allow myself to be abused again. That's our responsibility. And so if we keep picking partners that are abusing us, that's not them. That's because we're not doing the work. I went and did the work. I went and learned more so I could do better. That's our responsibility. I have a video to help you learn how to say no. It's called How to Say No to Anyone Without Feeling Guilty. I encourage you, go watch that. There's a 5-step process that'll make it a piece of cake for you to learn to say no. All right. Number 6, learn to rage. When we get taught and sent the message we can't feel, the first thing we do is we stuff rage. Think of it. I'm watching my mother, the rage of the embarrassment at being completely left out of that process and shamed like that, and having no recourse because mom and dad are the boss. Think of childhood. There's so many things, so many times our parents make decisions in our best interest and we want to rage. I'm not talking about those, but there are an awful lot of conditions in childhood where our feelings are minimized and suppressed and shamed because our parents just don't want to deal with it. Whether they're stressed or they don't care, or because we don't teach how to parent, they just don't know. There are many reasons. But we learned it is not okay to express our anger and our feelings. That's the emotional neglect. I can't express rage. That's a problem in this house. It was a problem in my house. There was only one person who could ever get angry. It was my father. Flat out. I could never express rage. Ever. That is something we all need to work through. Okay? Is giving ourselves, because most people have tremendous guilt and shame over feeling anger of any kind. And so what I suggest is learning to write an anger letter. And get as vicious and judgmental as possible. And then, whether it's hitting your steering wheel, taking a baseball bat to your bed, a golf club, a punching bag, something, learning to let it out. Okay? Finally, number 7 is learn to grieve. Learn to feel sadness. We were never, I mean, think of just some of the situations I brought up. There's a lot of things to grieve and feel sad about. And my God, what about your childhood? What about your life? I'm sure you've been through, if you're watching, still watching, there has to have been tremendous grief and sadness that you experienced. Well, you deserve to let that out. You deserve to feel it. You deserve to be given permission to express it. And that's what I'm trying to do here is, it's okay. You get to express this. Now, in a sense, become the parent that you didn't have. The parent that looks at the child inside of you and says, tell me about your sadness. Please express it. Again, this would be something I'd write about. We have to learn to get to acceptance and heal from the emotional neglect. What most people do is they stay stuck in the first 3 stages of grief: the shock and denial, the anger, which they suppress, and the bargaining. The bargaining is where we minimize, suppress, and make excuses for our parents' perfect imperfections. We don't want to admit the truth. We are in denial. Because why? We don't want to do the sadness and depression. Number 4, we cannot get to recovery without dealing with the emotional pain and the sadness. That is critical. That's why the last 2 steps are rage and grief and sadness, because from there we move into acceptance and then we're free of this pain. So I encourage you, here are the list of things to bonuses to get better at all of this. Watch my videos. What are the signs of emotional neglect? If you want deeper, to go deeper into, maybe you're still on the fence as to whether you experienced it, watch my video, What are the Signs of Emotional Neglect? To learn how to say no, watch my video, How to Say No to Anyone Without Feeling Guilty. To learn how to ask for your needs and wants, pull up my video, Codependence Recovery, How to Ask for Your Needs and Wants. Also, take my free masterclass, Your Journey to Emotional Mastery. This will walk you through how to give the pain back. It'll teach you emotional mastery, which is how to learn to stop minimizing your feelings and start living in your feelings, all right? If you want to take this process even further, I would encourage you to buy my book. Everything up to this point is free. If you want to make a further investment in yourself, buy my book. The final step is my master classes, which can be found at www.thegreatnessyou.com, the letter U. And the whole series of master classes will walk you through that recovery. I would encourage you to take all of them, not just the free one. So there you go. If you think this will help somebody who's suffered from emotional neglect and help them heal it, please share it. Leave me your comments. And as always, enjoy the journey.